That's a bad loss. I mean, let's be real. You lose at home, second unranked team at home for the year, and there's a lot of different parts you can focus on. But I think the biggest thing is you lost a game that you had won. I mean, basically, the game was essentially over. You're up 4 with 20 seconds left. Ugo blocks a shot. We can't get the rebound. They put the putback up and score. It's a 2-point game. We don't call timeout. We inbound the ball to Dillingham. Makes both free throws, we win. Makes both free throws, game's over. He makes one. We didn't call timeout before the free throws, so they come down. We don't foul. Reed Shepherd, and I just rewatched the play, I have no idea why Reed was where he was on the floor, but not even close to his man. His man who's been hot, I think hit 7 threes tonight? He hit.
Yes, headband guy.
Yeah, he hit 7 threes. He ends up open and makes a 3, and we go to overtime, and I just didn't feel like we had a shot when we went to overtime. Now, with that said, I mean, if you had come back and won that would have been a gritty win in overtime, but we never really looked under control in overtime. Then Dillingham goes out, and at that point you're playing with essentially – I mean, think about this. You had 4 top 20 recruits, and in the last 3 minutes of the game you were playing with none of them. You were playing with 4 upperclassmen and Reed, and we just didn't have enough offense at that point, and we lost the game. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it. So I think it's like the micro level and then the macro level. Let's start with the micro level. I think Kentucky had 2 times where they should have won the game. They went up 41-31. We always talk about in UK football how the end of the first half and the start of the second half has at times for Mark Stoops been a very difficult period of time, especially the end of the first half. We were up 41-31 with 2 minutes to go. They score 5. We don't score any. And then they score the first 6 of the second half. So that little period, which in football is, Freddie Maggard used to always talk about as the most crucial time in football. It's not as important in basketball, but it's important. And you go up from 41-31 to 42-41. I think if they extend that lead to 10 or 14, 14 or 15, they win the game. But then the second thing is, they make some big plays down the stretch, and they have that 4-point lead. And look, you can micromanage decisions, but I think there were a lot of really poor decisions down there, okay? First, when they make the shot to cut it to 2, Kentucky had 2 timeouts. Call timeout. Make sure you find a way to get that ball to Reed Shepherd or Antonio Reeves. Antonio Reeves is a 90% free throw shooter. I think Reed Shepherd is like 84, but it feels like he's 90 because he doesn't miss them when they matter. Instead, you inbound to Dillingham. Now, Dillingham's still a good free throw shooter. He's 77%. But again, percentages. I'd like to have my 90% guy shooting rather than my 77% guy shooting. They don't do that. Shepherd is taking it inbounds. Now, I've seen some people say he shouldn't have been the one taking it inbounds. I think there's an argument for having him take it inbounds, but you got to find a way to immediately get it back to him. But they don't. So Dillingham comes down. Another chance to call a timeout and say, well, when he makes the first free throws, Cal said after the game he didn't want to call a timeout because he didn't want to make Dillingham nervous. Fair point. That's okay. He makes the first free throw. Now he doesn't have to worry about losing the game, right? So I think at that point, that's when you call a timeout and you say foul if he misses. Foul. Cal said after the game he thought there was too much time left. I just went and looked at it, and I watched the last play. With 9 seconds to go, the one Florida guard is dribbling at the top of the key. He starts to penetrate. He gets into the lane with 7 seconds to go. You got to foul right there. You got to. Especially when you have a team that can't defend the 3. But they don't. Now, this is where this isn't on Cal. This is on Reed. Go look at that play. I have no idea what Reed Shepherd's doing. And as good as he was tonight, and he was great for most of the game, he scored 24 points and was the primary driver of the offense. But he was really bad on defense. Like, really bad on defense. Probably, I mean, he gave up what? 6 of those 7 threes were on him. I don't know what he's doing on that last play. If you go watch the play, the guy who has the ball is double teamed. Where Reed is guarding, there isn't a human being. But he loses his guy makes the 3, we go to overtime. In my opinion, you have to foul there. And if you look on Twitter, I put their statistics about it. Essentially, if you don't foul, you have a 17% chance of losing. And if you do foul, you have like a 10 or something like that, or 9. It's not a whole lot of percentages, but it's enough. You're basically twice as likely to win if you foul. Tom Izzo, Mike Krzyzewski, Bill Self, all those guys, they foul every time. We should foul, but we didn't. And we lose. And it's the second loss to an unranked team at home. And that's the macro part of this, the big picture. First of all, our resume is now probably a 5 or a 6 seed. We were, according to Joe Lunardi, the 15th best team on the brackets going into this game. This probably puts us 19, 20, 21. It's Florida's first quad 1 win in over 2 years, Billy.
2 years.
They hadn't won a quad 1 game in 2 years. They win one tonight. That might be the game that ends up putting them in the tournament, maybe. But now you have a resume where, we've talked about it. It's just not that good. And we still have to go to Tennessee. We still have to go to Auburn. I think we still go to Mississippi State. Those are all 3 tournament teams. You got to think it'll be hard to win all of them. So we're certainly not a 1 seed now. Probably not a 2 seed. Going to be hard to even be a 3. And you're looking at that 4, 5, 6 where you're at the mercy of the draw, which is where we were last year, if you remember. So that's disappointing. This team's better than that. I know DJ Wagner was out. I do think that hurts Kentucky a lot. I think it makes it very difficult for them to guard and actually makes it difficult for them to score. I mean, we scored 84 in the first half, but that's with Shepard having a career high and Ugo having a career high. We had 2 guys get a career high and lose at home to Florida. That's not good. And it also is sort of testament to this. We continue to, in the last few years, just take losses that this program doesn't take. Now, I read everybody say, oh, Matt, you don't get it. College basketball's different. College basketball's different, blah, blah, blah. I just don't buy that. Some of college basketball is different, but great teams rarely lose at home. And when they lose at home, they lose to other great teams. So go back and look through the years. Go back and look at the last 7 or 8 national champs. The only one you're going to find that lost home games, a few of them, is UConn last year. And they lost to, I think, only one team that was bad. We've now lost to Wilmington in Florida. So I am disappointed. And I'm not going to apologize for being disappointed. I think if you're a Kentucky basketball fan, you should be disappointed. This is Kentucky. We always say this is the gold standard. Then be the gold standard. Be the gold standard. We haven't been the gold standard in the regular season the last few years. We haven't been the gold standard in the SEC tournament the last few years. And we haven't been the gold standard in the NCAA tournament. Last time Kentucky made a Final Four, Billy, was 2015. Every other blue blood program has made at least one, if not multiple, Final Fours since then. North Carolina has and won a title. Duke has. Kansas has and won a title. UConn has and won a title. Even UCLA has. We haven't. And in the last few years, we haven't been very good in the regular season or the postseason, if we're being honest. That's not Kentucky. Now, people who say, well, that happens everywhere in college basketball. Yeah, maybe. But it doesn't happen to Kentucky. And to the schools that are like us, does it happen to them? Maybe occasionally. But you know what they've done and we haven't? Won. They've won. Yeah, Kansas got blown out at home 2 years ago by us. What'd they go do? They won the title. Yeah, UConn's taken home losses, but they won the title. We have won one SEC tournament game in 4 years. We have won one NCAA tournament game in the last 3 years. Granted, one of those, in the last 4 seasons, but one of them was COVID year, meaning the COVID tournament that was canceled. It's just not been Kentucky. Now, that doesn't mean I think things are falling apart. There's been a lot of positive this year. This team is still good, and this team is still fun. But little things win and lose games. And too often, we don't do them now. Too often, we're the ones making the play that loses. So if you let Antonio Reeves shoot that free throw and have a 90% free throw shooter instead of a 77%, that's a 13% difference. If you foul and there's an 18% chance of losing versus a 9%, that's a 9% difference. And Billy, what do all those things add up to? Over the years, you add up to losing games. I still love this team. I still think a lot of them play way above themselves. Ugo had a career game tonight.
He was awesome.
Reed was bad on defense, but he was great on offense. Antonio Reeves had 19 again. Trey Mitchell was bad. But you know what? It's time for us to be Kentucky again. I don't think that's beyond happening this year. It still could. But I want you to look at our losses. We lost to Kansas, undermanned. Okay. We lost to Wilmington at home. Okay. I bet on Wilmington sometimes. They're not great. We lost to A&M. I think they have 3 conference wins. We lost to South Carolina. They might be better than we thought. And we lost to Florida, who won at home, who won their first quad 1 game in 2 years. At some point, that has to start mattering. At some point, that has to start frustrating folks. And the fact that it seems like for some it doesn't is honestly frustrating to me.